So Jay-Z just wrapped up one of the biggest concert runs of his career, 3 nights at Yankee Stadium, and honestly, the guest list alone could be its own show. But out of everyone who showed up, one detail is getting way more attention than anything happening on stage. People noticed Angela Simmons was there, and people also noticed Yo Gotti was there. Same weekend, same building. And now half the internet is trying to figure out if they showed up together, or if this was just one of those awkward, we both got invited situation. Jay-Z's Yankee Stadium run wasn't just a normal tour stop. This was 3 completely different concerts across 3 nights. Each one built around a different era of his career, and each one packed with surprise guests. Night 1 brought out Nas, Alicia Keys, Memphis Bleak, and even Beyoncé and Blue Ivy joined in. Night 2 had Eminem, Pharrell, and Slick Rick. And the third night, the one they called Extra Innings, was supposed to be the biggest of the 3. It actually got delayed almost 4.5 hours because of a security scare outside the stadium. Something like 10,000 people were stuck outside, and someone tried to rush the doors. Jay-Z came out around 12:20 in the morning and personally apologized to the crowd, saying he had to make sure everyone outside was safe before he'd even think about starting the show. Once that final show finally kicked off, it delivered. Rihanna showed up, Usher showed up, Tiana Taylor, Jeezy, Pusha T, Fat Joe, Jadakiss, the list goes on. And sitting in the crowd, watching from those VIP risers with the champagne sponsors, was a stacked group of celebrities. Tyler Perry was there, Travis Scott, Kelly Rowland, and then, in that same lineup of names, you see both Angela Simmons and Yo Gotti. And it wasn't just those 2 nights either. The whole weekend had this energy where you genuinely couldn't predict what was coming next. 1 minute, it's Slick Rick walking out. The next, it's Eminem tearing through some of his biggest records back to back. Then Pharrell comes out and does this whole run of older records, songs that a lot of younger fans in the crowd probably only knew from samples they'd heard elsewhere. That's kind of the thing about a run like this. It wasn't built for casual fans. It was built for people who followed his career for decades and wanted to see the deep cuts get their moment, right alongside the obvious hits everybody expected. Now on its own, that's not really news. These are 2 of the biggest names to come out of Memphis and New York's celebrity circles respectively, and Jay-Z's concert was basically a who's who of hip-hop, sports, and entertainment that weekend. Plenty of people who know each other, or used to date each other, or just run in the same circles, ended up in that building at the same time. That happens constantly at events like this. But Angela and Yo Gotti aren't just 2 random names on a guest list. They have history, a lot of it. And that history is exactly why people started paying closer attention the second both their names showed up in the same coverage of the same event. Here's the quick version if you're not familiar. Yo Gotti and Angela Simmons didn't just start dating out of nowhere. Gotti had actually been talking about his interest in her for years, going all the way back to 2016 when he dropped the song Down in the DM. At the time, people didn't think much of it beyond it being a hit record, but it turned out he genuinely meant it, because 6 years later, in late 2022, the 2 of them actually started dating in real life. They went public with it on New Year's Eve heading into 2023, both posting about it around the same time. Once they were public, they were very public. Red carpets together, vacations together. She even appeared in his music video for No Fake Love. They were spotted together at big industry events too, including the MTV Video Music Awards in September 2024, where they showed up alongside other artists from his label. For a while there were engagement rumors floating around, especially after he took her on an elaborate birthday trip in September 2024 and reportedly gifted her a bunch of designer pieces for her birthday. On paper, it looked like a couple that was building towards something more permanent, the kind of relationship that gets talked about as an eventual wedding rather than just another celebrity fling. That's actually part of why the breakup caught so many people off guard when it eventually came. This wasn't some short fling that fizzled out after a few months. This was 3 years of a relationship that had already survived plenty of public scrutiny, tabloid rumors, and the general pressure that comes with two famous people dating in the spotlight. When something ends after that long and after that much investment, people tend to assume there's a real story behind it. Then things started to shift in the spring of 2025. Gotti posted something from London captioned, "Lonely in London," and almost immediately fans started speculating that something was wrong between them. Around the same time, Angela posted a cryptic message on her Instagram stories saying, and this is close to word for word, that she only wants what flows toward her in life, and what goes, goes. People connected the dots pretty fast. A source close to the situation told one outlet that Angela felt like she was pouring in more effort than she was getting back, and that Gotti's schedule, the studio time, the business meetings, the constant appearances, left her feeling like she wasn't the priority anymore. By June of 2025, Angela made it official herself. She went on Angie Martinez's podcast and flat out confirmed they were done. She said it wasn't her choice going into it emotionally.
What people see versus what it is. We had a lot of great...
But the decision to end things ultimately was hers. Her exact words were that she wasn't with him anymore, but she still respected him, and that it was all love. To get into the specific reasons publicly, her words there were that there's a certain level of what she can share, and she's just not that type of person to go into detail. So that's where things stood for most of 2025. Broken up, but clearly not bitter about it. No public drama, no throwing shade at each other online. Just two people who moved on from a relationship that had run its course. Then in March of this year, Angela sat down with Cam Newton on his Funky Friday podcast.
Date. I wouldn't say the word date.
Well, what would you say?
We went out on a date.
A lot of people.
And Yo Gotti came up again. This time she went a little further than just saying there's mutual respect. She said that looking back on the relationship, she'd genuinely make a great wife one day. Cam followed up and asked if that meant Gotti wouldn't have made a great husband, and she pushed back on that framing. Her actual explanation was that if things ended, it was probably just because he wasn't ready at that point in his life. Not that he was incapable of it, just that the timing wasn't right for him. That's a pretty telling comment if you think about it. She's not saying he did anything wrong. She's not painting him as a villain. She's basically saying the relationship ended because of timing, not because of anything either of them did to sabotage it. So now fast forward to July 2026, and both of them turn up at Jay-Z's Yankee Stadium finale. Given everything that's been said publicly, given how respectfully they've both talked about each other since the breakup, it's not exactly shocking that fans immediately started asking the obvious question. Did they come together? It is this just two exes who both happen to be A-list level famous, and both happen to run in circles where Jay-Z invites you to sit in his private section? Realistically, based on everything that's actually been reported, there's no confirmation that they arrived together, sat together, or even interacted at all that night. What we actually know is that both of their names appeared in the same reporting about who attended the final show, sitting somewhere among that huge list of athletes, actors, and musicians who all packed into that VIP section together. That's it. That's the entire basis for the speculation. It's worth pointing out just how packed that guest list actually was, because it kind of puts things in perspective. We're talking Michael Rubin, Robert Kraft, multiple NBA stars like Carl Anthony Towns and Draymond Green, actors like Tyler Perry, musicians like Peso Pluma and Tierra Whack, even a former baseball player in Robinson Cano. When a guest list is that massive and that's spread out across different industries, it's genuinely easy for two people to be in the same building all night and never once cross paths. Stadiums are huge. VIP sections at events like this often have multiple separate areas, suites, and risers, rather than one single shared space where everybody's mingling together. But that hasn't stopped people from speculating, because that's just how this stuff works now. When two people with a very public, very recent romantic history end up at the same major event, especially one as star-studded and heavily photographed as this one, fans are going to connect dots regardless of whether there's actual evidence to connect. It happened almost instantly online. Pulling up old clips of them together, resurfacing that Down in the DM music video moment where Gotti first brought her out on stage and asking whether this could be some kind of reunion moment happening quietly behind the scenes. You also have to factor in how gossip pages and fan accounts operate these days. A lot of these celebrity attendance roundups just pull from photo agencies and event credentials, then list out every recognizable name that got flagged walking in. They're not necessarily tracking who sat next to who, or who arrived in the same car, or who left together at the end of the night. So when a headline groups Angela and Yo Gotti's names together, it's usually just because both names showed up in the same batch of event photos, not because anyone actually confirmed they interacted. That distinction matters a lot here, because it's the difference between an actual reunion story and just two exes independently being famous enough to get invited to the same thing. It's also worth remembering that these two never had a messy public breakup. There was no cheating scandal, no public argument, no throwing subliminal shots at each other on social media. If anything, based on how Angela's talked about him in interviews since the split, comparing it to a mutual understanding rather than a falling out, this is exactly the kind of breakup where fans hold out hope for a reconciliation. When two people speak kindly about each other after a split, people naturally wonder if there's still something there. Add on top of that the setting itself. Jay-Z's Yankee Stadium shows weren't just concerts, they were cultural events. Being invited into that VIP section, sitting among people like Beyoncé's circle, Tyler Perry, top athletes, that's not something random. It says something about your standing in that world. Both Angela and Yo Gotti clearly still move in those same elite entertainment circles, which honestly makes sense given their individual careers. But it also means their paths were always going to cross at events like this, relationship status or not. So where does that leave things? Right now, the honest answer is nobody outside of Angela and Yo Gotti themselves actually knows if there was any real interaction between them that night. What we do know is that fans noticed, fans talked about it, and it's added one more chapter to a story that's already had quite a few twists, from the song that started it all back in 2016, to the public relationship, to the breakup, to Angela's recent comments about him potentially just not being ready at the time.